What would it be like if you were born 4.7 million years ago? Life 4.7 million years ago would be very difficult for us now. Hi everyone, it's me. Humans have been around for about 300,000 years. That means that life today is very different from how it was even just 1 million years ago. But what would life be like for 0.7 million years ago? How did prehistoric humans even survive? Join me today as we look back in time to learn how humans survived 4.7 million years ago. First, let's figure out what kind of technology they would have had. It would be very primitive. The reason is simple. They simply didn't have the knowledge or resources to build anything more advanced than stone tools. At this point in human history, humans wouldn't even be called humans. They would be called hominids, because the evolution from apes to humans wasn't complete yet. They would have lived mostly in Africa, where the first hominid appeared. There are many different types of hominids, such as Australopithecus afarensis, which includes the famous Lucy fossil. These hominids were not too different from modern humans in appearance, but they walked on two legs and they had much smaller brains than modern humans. However, they used simple stone tools to help them hunt and cut meat. They also used fire at this point, although it's unknown whether they could make fire themselves or if they found it naturally. If they did know how to start a fire, then this gave them an advantage over other animals, because they could use it to cook their food and keep warm during the night. The next thing we'll look at is their homes. Hominids didn't live in houses or any type of shelter. Most likely, they spent most of their time outside. Some scientists believe that early humans may have stayed in caves at night to protect themselves from predators. As time went on, they began to build tree shelters. Over time, these shelters became more advanced until eventually humans started building huts and houses. This process took hundreds of thousands of years. So 4.7 million years ago, hominids would have lived in caves or in trees. Now, let's take a look at the food they ate. Most of the food would be very different from what we eat today. For example, there would be no pizza or hamburgers. Instead, they would eat lots of fruit, vegetables, and meat from animals they hunted. If they didn't hunt successfully, they would eat plants instead. Since they had teeth for grinding plants and meat, it's believed they were omnivores. Meat must have tasted pretty good, since most of the stone tools were designed for cutting up meat rather than plants. So it seems that hunting was a big part of their diet. Sometimes they would scavenge the carcasses of dead animals. This meant they didn't have to work hard to get their food, but they often risked getting hurt from other scavengers that were much more vicious than they were. Humans and hyenas often fought over the same food source, and hyenas were much stronger and more aggressive. In addition, there were saber-toothed cats, big wild dogs, and giant short-faced bears. All of these animals would gladly steal your food if you weren't careful. Humans would try to defend themselves with sharp rocks and clubs, but it often wasn't enough. So sometimes they needed to outsmart the other scavengers to get their food. What were the major world events 4.7 million years ago? Let's find out. 4.7 million years ago, humans didn't exist. So there weren't really any major world events at that time, at least not from humans. Our earliest ancestors were still living in trees and didn't really do anything that affected the rest of the world. At this point, the world itself was changing though. The continents were moving, the climate was changing, and new species of animals were evolving. Humans wouldn't start to affect the world until we evolved into modern humans about 300,000 years ago. That's when our ancestors started making weapons, hunting large animals, and eventually starting wars. Next, let's talk about their jobs. Humans don't have jobs. Jobs are something we created after we developed civilization. Before that, we had to do things like hunt, gather food, grow food, and make tools in order to survive. These tasks are very different from jobs today. You see, 4.7 million years ago, before humans existed, male and female hominids probably did the same tasks. They would both have to search for food, care for young hominids, and make tools. Women and men had equal roles in their society. But once humans did evolve, men and women started doing different things. Men started hunting while women gathered berries and other plants. This made sense because generally men were taller and stronger, so they could hunt, while women were better at gathering plants because their hands were better suited for picking up small things. Both men and women still made tools, but they didn't have formal jobs. The concept of a job didn't appear until farming communities formed. Before that, hominids, or early humans, relied on what they could gather or hunt for. So their work was directly related to how much food they got to eat. If they didn't hunt or gather enough food, they would starve. Let's talk about what their clothing would be like. They wouldn't wear anything like we do today, at least not anything that we would recognize. For most of human history, humans didn't wear clothing. They only started wearing clothing after they learned how to make it. At first, their clothing probably consisted of animal skins. They may have also used leaves or bark to cover their bodies. They may have also worn necklaces and other jewelry made out of shells and stones. Most likely they wore the clothing as a status symbol or to attract mates. Clothing became common after the agricultural revolution, though when humans could stay in one place and grow their own food. Before that, humans were nomadic. They traveled from place to place, following herds of animals to hunt or to follow the plants that they ate. It simply isn't practical to carry around clothing when you're traveling all the time. So to answer the question, humans wouldn't wear any clothing for 0.7 million years ago, because they wouldn't be human yet. And even if they were, they would be nomadic, and it wouldn't be practical to wear clothing. Finally, let's discuss how long they would survive. Their lifespan would be short. The average lifespan of a human today is about 79 years old. However, 4.7 million years ago, the average lifespan was much lower. Most hominids probably died between the ages of 20 and 30. This was due to many factors, including disease and being eaten by predators. Many of them probably died young from infections that we can easily treat today. Also, remember how I said that they were often attacked by other scavengers? Well, those attacks were dangerous and often resulted in death. The fact that they died so young also meant that they never reached their full potential. For example, they never developed their intelligence to the level it is now. Since most of them died in their 20s and 30s, they didn't live long enough to pass on their knowledge to younger generations. They also didn't live long enough to accumulate enough knowledge themselves. In conclusion, life 4.7 million years ago would be very difficult for us now. The reason is simple. We are too advanced. Our technology, infrastructure, and way of life are all too advanced for that time period. Even if we somehow managed to adapt to the primitive conditions, we would still stick out like a sore thumb. People from 4.7 million years ago wouldn't understand our language, our customs, or our way of thinking. We would be completely out of place. Not to mention that we would probably be hunted down by packs of hyenas and wild dogs. And we couldn't defend ourselves without our advanced weapons and body armor. We may be able to survive for a while, but eventually we would be caught and killed. So count yourself lucky. You never had to live for 0.7 million years ago. But what about 1 million years ago? Watch this video to find out what life was like 1 million years ago. Click here to watch this interesting video. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any new videos. Thanks for watching. See you next time.